Folks, it's time to sit up again for another episode of the Soul Sessions. But with me today, grab a drink as well, because it's the modern gentleman, Zachary Swift. Welcome to the show, Zachary.
Hello, young sir, and how are you?
Even better having a drink in my hand. But having the modern gentleman, I'm blessed, I'm honoured, and we're suited up as well, facile individuals we are. But Zachary, I got to know as well, I say every guest has a story and every story has a beginning. What's the story of the modern gentleman as a wrestling fan? How did that all begin?
Oh, I suppose it's a rather good question, isn't it? I'm not one of these wrestlers who have that sort of encyclopedic knowledge of all the matches that have ever happened and a sort of childhood sort of obsessed with wrestling. I saw bits and pieces as a child, as I think most children did. The early attitude area into the ruthless aggression, the sort of John Cena's and the Randy Ortons of the world, but I wasn't a big wrestling fan, No. I had other pursuits as a teenager and as a young man.
Oh, indeed, man. We all have those other desires we wish to go for, but obviously, wrestling being kind of in the was it in the background for you? Was it something as a wee hobby? Some fans like to take it too seriously and they go all in, as they say. But for the modern gentleman, I can imagine it was a classy pastime for you.
Yeah, it was. Well, listen, I enjoyed wrestling as a child. I did, but it was more about characters rather than the wrestling. At a young age, you don't really have the sort of the mental capacity to really understand the wrestling as such, and the sort of the intricacies of wrestling and the ability and the sportsmanship involved, and in these sort of physical bouts. For me, as a child, it was all about the entrances, the music, the Randy Orton's the shower of have you seen it? His old entrance when he began, the
Burning
shower of
yes.
Yeah, it was utterly phenomenal as a child. I adored it. But listen, I didn't really get into wrestling as a physical sport and that sort of as a contest and learning really about wrestling until only a few years ago, really.
Oh, very well done for you, sir. You've done so much things and well in this business, so it's got to be congratulatory for you. But you mentioned, obviously, characters back then, and this running season of the Soul Sessions has been a common theme of character work coming up with ring psychology as well. And, I look back at that time, especially the ruthless aggression. There were so many great characters, Brock Lesnar as well, Eddie Guerrero, so many great characters. I want to know for you, Zachary, what kind of characters really resonated with you that stuck out?
Good question, my friend. Who really stuck? Do you know who really stuck out to me? JBL. John Redfield. And now I'm of this is showing my age a little bit, but I'm of an age where I didn't know the APA. I didn't know John Bradshaw Layfield as anything else other than this character, this man who arrived in this limo with the bullhorns on the front, the cowboy hat, and just no matter how, he always kept his title. And he had Eddie Guerrero chasing him, John Cena chasing him, some of the greatest wrestlers of a generation. But yet JBL, for the most part, always managed to escape with that belt. And I thought that was a rather rather amazing that he was able to do. Some people may have thought he was a little bit dastardly and underhand. I always thought it was rather impressive.
Well, hey, dastardly got success at the end for JBL. He done very well. And you mentioned obviously the APA era of him to JBL. Do you think maybe we not slept on like one of the best character reworks?
I think so. I totally think so. Now being able to go back and see, there's things like the network online, and being able to go back and look at these catalogs of what wrestlers have done previously in their time, seeing who he was before he was John Bradshaw Layfield, worlds apart in characters, and from being perhaps mid-card tag team wrestler to being one of the main events and one of the mainstays of SmackDown for years, I think is so impressive. And certain people, I think there's certainly a story or two about JBL backstage and his behavior, and perhaps that's something else for another time. But on screen, I think that just reinvention of a character and getting himself to the top of the card is admirable.
Hey, very admirable. I look back at that Eddie Guerrero match with the whole Judgment Day and the blood coming down Eddie's face, hard hitting and memorable as well. I want to know as well, Zachary, memorable moments are key, long lasting in this business. And I want to know what kind of characters do you think have had key moments that stick in your mind?
Oh, do you know, again, we're in the same sort of period of time. You know, the one match that always sticks with me, and particularly the moment in it, Randy Orton versus Mick Foley at it'll be Backlash 2004, I think it is. Backlash 2004, because they fought at Mania, and then this was like a rematch, and they did I think it was officially no holds barred or no disqualification. For Randy's, I believe, Intercontinental title at the time. And it was Randy Orton at this time, was like 22, 23 years old. He's like young, third generation, just like rising and rising and rising through the ranks. He's in Evolution at the time. And he has this match against Mick Foley. And there's no Evolution intervention in this as well. You know, this is such a trope you see all the time. You know, the faction come and help you get the win. This is just him against Mick Foley. And Mick Foley's just at his best insanity throughout this match. But there's a point where they do a tack spot. And of course, Randy's poured all of these tacks out in the middle of the ring. And I think I would have been, again, this is showing you my age, when I was around 12 years old when I saw this. And I hadn't really seen anything like this before. And he puts all the tacks out into the middle of the ring, and he's going to RKO Mick into the tacks, and Mick just pushes him off, and he lands back first into the tacks. They're stuck in him everywhere. And that look and his eyes and the way his hands shake, that's one of those wrestling moments that's always stuck with me.
Oh, absolutely. And then those moments build, Randy such a young age to be a star. But I want to touch upon something as well you mentioned. Music. Key. Very key, I believe, because, you can have a song that's just a 30-second loop, but then a song you want to listen to, workout playlist, or just even socializing, and have that song in the background is key. I want to know right now, Zachary, your top 4 wrestling entrance themes.
Oh, Lord. You're putting me on the spot here.
Yeah, we always do that in the Soul Sessions. We're a very spot-heavy show, kind of like AEW in a way.
I should have known. Okay. Let's see. First one that jumps to mind is Aleister Black's NXT theme tune.
Ooh, okay.
Don't ask me the name. Don't ask me what they're called. But that was the one where everyone goes, evil. Yeah, that one. The one. That is certainly one of my favorite songs. I do have a bit of a penchant for heavier metal. I did spend a youth listening to rather angry bands. Big fan of that. Johnny Gargano's also NXT theme. That was a bit of a banger. I always enjoyed that one. It's an ultimate, get you going when you're struggling to find motivation, perhaps at the gym on your last set or something. That was a fantastic song as well. Let's try and jump out of Black and Gold NXT. What else have I got for you? I don't want to say it, but CM Punk's obviously is just an iconic song in and out of wrestling. Really quite fantastic. And then, you know what? What else can I give you? What would be my 4? I'm trying to think of something a little bit, something of a curveball, something a bit of a wild card.
Ooh, wild card. I do love surprise.
Do you know what? I really liked when Orange Cassidy had "Where's My Mind" before I changed it. I thought it worked so perfectly. I really enjoyed that. I enjoy when wrestling songs aren't. There's a lot of generic heavy rock, especially when you look to sort of modern WWE. And I thought that fit as something a little bit different to a typical wrestler's entrance. I thought it was fantastic.
Very good. I was kind of upset when he went to James. I thought "Where's My Mind" worked so well, and I just loved that song. Hey, he got a proper send-off for Forbidden Door against Ospreay, so best way for a song to go out, because we know in wrestling songs can change, and sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. I want to know, Zachary, what kind of changing of wrestling themes come to your mind as maybe a bit of a downgrade, shall we say?
Oh, Lord. Who has lost a good song? Oh well, it's obvious, isn't it? It's Jungle Boy. He is just not the man for his new theme. Is it Beethoven? Is it Bach? I can't remember. Beethoven. Sure. But or Mozart. Is it Mozart? I don't know. It's one of them.
Classical.
Yeah, it's classical. But they say you should always wear a suit, and a suit shouldn't wear you. That entrance wears him. It does. He just isn't the man to have that theme. I'm afraid it doesn't work for him. I'm not a fan.
Hey, fair points indeed, my friend. But also, there was a bit of an area you touched upon there in your song recommendation, Black and Gold NXT. Now, I always love to learn. I always love learning from wrestlers about the history and all that, but their thoughts on something as well. I didn't watch NXT, Black and Gold. That's something I never actually touched upon. So learning about it from guests' point of view is very interesting to me. So why do you, as a viewer of that, why was it so special, Black and Gold NXT?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of wrestling fans and even wrestlers themselves, will sort of pinpoint and highlight Black and Gold NXT as like some of the best wrestling of all time, but especially over the last 10 years, a real revival in professional wrestling. But for myself as well, it was what got me back into wrestling. Like I say, as a young child watching, I guess, that sort of end of Attitude into Ruthless Aggression sort of era, but without really understanding it, It was pomp and pageantry and moments and characters, but it was just sort of, a child mindlessly absorbing television. There was no real integrity to my wrestling viewing. And I actually found myself watching Black and Gold through YouTube. And I know I'm not the first person to do that, to find this sort of track back to wrestling as well. Watching YouTube lists, like top 10 moments and things.
Yeah.
Sort of those late nights where you may have been out for dinner or drinks, you get home, you can't really sleep, so you fire up the old YouTube machine, have a little look, and a random recommendation comes in, and it says top 10 moments in wrestling of whatever it may be, And I found myself watching these videos, and sort of that's where I sort of become fascinated to like how wrestling actually, what's involved in wrestling more than just an entrance and jumping off something as high as you can or landing in thumbtacks. That's where I started to think about the sort of intricacies of professional wrestling, and that's what sort of drew me back in. And then that sort of drew me to Black and Gold NXT, and you have wrestlers just doing some of the absolute best. The best wrestling there has been for a long time, with guys like the Revival, DIY, Andrade was amazing at that time. Malachi, formerly Aleister Black as well. These guys were just putting on absolute wrestling showcases, 20-minute matches that were just incredible.
No, absolutely. I mean, really stand out because, NXT was just as popular as like the main roster of Raw or SmackDown because people truly loved that experience. Now, obviously, NXT would move to the USA, being live, and then further down the line, it would change to NXT 2.0, or as I like to call it, NXT Skittles. So I want to know, Zachary, that change as a fan, do you think it was maybe necessary for the product? Do you think it was a kind of a whiplash experience, just changing on the fly like that?
I think, the thing about WWE and its programming, you have to remember that it's PG programming. It is PG. It is sort of directed towards mainly children, which is interesting. A lot of wrestling fans aren't children, So, and then I think Black and Gold NXT was targeted at that older demographic of wrestling fans and viewers, and I think that's what drew so many people in, and it was beloved by so many fans. And I think, for better or worse, NXT 2.0 or Skittles, as you said, was an attempt to make NXT more like the main programming, something that was more friendly to a younger demographic. And I think that's why a lot of those Black and Gold fans, it was such an offense to them, because it was taking away what they thought was more sophisticated, more age-appropriate wrestling for themselves, and suddenly it became, like a cartoon, effectively. It was colorful and bright, and the characters were all rather one-dimensional.
No, absolutely. But obviously, it's kind of worked out in the end, because obviously now it's came back to this sort of, black and white era now, and they've had so much success. Becky Lynch coming down and being the NXT Women's Championship, then dropping it to Layla Valkyrie, just showing that, these young stars are now being built up. Do you think like now this is maybe a resurgence for the brand?
I would say so. I must admit, I can't. I haven't really watched much NXT. Not since it was Black and Gold and Truth. But you know, I see bits and bobs. And I did see that Becky Lynch, she had dropped the title. Was it this week or last week? But yeah, it feels like it's on the right track again. You know.
Oh, absolutely. And building stars and memories for the future is what we always love to see. But obviously, you are the modern gentleman, Zachary. And going back to yourself, you know, what made you pursue, you know, just being a fan to now being a fan was to get into the squared circle?
Well, you know, I have always been a fan of competition. You know, competitive sports, whatever they may be. Where I grew up in rural Northumberland, just over the border into England. And I went to a school that specialized in performing arts. So I was in theater a lot as a child and doing a lot of performance-based things. But at the same time, I did a lot of, I played a lot of rugby, I played a lot of football. I always did things that had a competitive edge. So it sort of felt naturally that I would want to put the two things together. And I think for its worth, I think pro wrestling is absolutely the only real place that allows me to champion both of those things, the elements of performance and competitive nature.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I always think of wrestling as a very creative medium. You know, you look at something like a movie or a TV show, when that series or movie finishes, it stops. The actors go and move on to another project. That story could either be continued or not, depending on the network's renewal. But with wrestling, you know, especially with like something like WWE, they're on Mondays, they're on Fridays, but they're doing house shows and stuff like that, and continuously developing their stories through social media interactions, through the press, through the fans, and through the shows. I mean, what is it about wrestling? Do you think that maybe it's a creative storyline 24/7?
Well, I think, you know, we are these characters and throughout our lives as well. And I think for the most part, a lot of us are exactly the same within the ring and outside of the ring. You know, we're real people, but what you see in the ring or on, especially, I mean, on social media or on the screens is just our own personalities just dialed up to 11, you know? So I think, you know, we aren't characters playing roles. We are people who are just are giving an absolute sort of exaggerated version of ourselves.
Very true, my friend. And obviously, you would build up yourself in a place that I've had familiarities with on the show, formerly FPWA, now Pro Wrestling Ready. And, you know, I want to know, how did you find out, you know, originally about FPWA and then deciding to go there?
Good question. So I went to a couple of local shows. So it was around the time that I got, like I said, I started to get more of an interest into professional wrestling again as I was older, around end of 2018, 2019, started going to some local shows. I live in Edinburgh, as I know you do yourself. And so I'd been to a couple of Discovery shows, Discovery Wrestling, and also a couple of ICW shows over in Glasgow. I thought, you know, I sort of admired the sportsmanship I saw in the ring and the characters, and I thought this was wonderful. And then, you know, I think they were advertising perhaps at one of the shows, or I can't quite remember, but I saw Andy, the head coach from Pro Wrestling Ready, wrestling at one of the shows, and I just thought, I thought he was brilliant. I thought he exemplified what I believe pro wrestling should be. You know, he has a real sort of British way of wrestling, about the intricacies of the holds and the way he moves around the ring. I was really, really fascinated by. So yeah, I think I just covered by chance that he was coaching. I'm not entirely sure how I came across it, but yeah, I jumped at the opportunity. I thought I would love to have that opportunity to learn from him.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, Pro Wrestling Ready has offered so many great opportunities, not even just physical learning, but visual and learning through seminars. You know, they've had people like Noam Dar and Rampage Brown and Wild Boar, you know, those type of seminars. How special are they to, you know, developing and training as a wrestler?
Oh, massively. Like I can't overstate how important they are to sort of your progression, your understanding of professional wrestling. Because I think there's something that's really important that's to be understood and perhaps isn't understood by people who aren't wrestlers. Wrestling is subjective. There isn't one correct way to wrestle. And I think people forget that sometimes. They think, you know, there's a very particular way to do things. I think if you only learn from one person or one style, that becomes your mindset. But I think if you can listen to other voices and hear different people do things in different ways, it allows you to understand that every different wrestling coach or even every different wrestler has a slightly different way of doing something and works in a different way. And only by understanding the sort of myriad of wrestling techniques and approaches allows you to build your own approach.
Mm-hmm. Oh, hey, fair point indeed. You've had so many great seminars. Is there a particular lesson that you've taken from one seminar that you really hold to your chest? Like, yeah, that piece of information is going to help me develop.
Yeah, actually, there definitely is. I would say I was lucky enough to be present at the Boar seminar when Boar was taking a seminar up at Pro Wrestling Ready now, and we were talking about wrestling in character. And one of the things Boar said was, "You're familiar, of course, with the suplex."
Yes.
One of the most common wrestling moves that both wrestlers, wrestling fans, and even non-wrestling fans know about. And it's a move that is so indicative of professional wrestling. This idea of picking someone up and launch them over your head. What Boar said was that it isn't enough to just be able to do a suplex. You have to do a suplex within how you perform it as a character, as a wrestler. There isn't one. It's sort of touching on what I just said, but it's this idea that like there isn't one correct way to do things. Boar wrestles like a madman, like a wild boar. You see him do a suplex, it is like a boar throwing a man across the ring. If you are a gentleman, there's a gentlemanly way to do this. You're throwing someone over your head, but there's still a way to do this. You have to do something in a particular way. And that really was what helped open my mind to understanding how a character moves and operates within the ring. It's one thing to have a character outside of the ring in promo or in the way you look and dress, but to have a way you move in the ring and have that synergy between those things is so important.
Very true indeed. And that's great advice as well. So I obviously got to ask, Zachary, you could get 30 minutes with anyone for a dream seminar. Who would you want to have that seminar with and why?
Oh, it's William Regal, isn't it?
Very true.
The original gentleman. I think he would have some fantastic stories and some incredible knowledge to pass on. Johnny Saint as well. You familiar with Johnny Saint? Old world sport wrestler. One of the best British wrestlers to ever do it. A fantastic wrestler. Some of the moves that he sort of created and popularized were just fantastic. I think his brain would be wonderful to learn from. Yeah, I would say one of those two. Perhaps, Bryan Danielson, of course, would be an honor to learn from as well.
Well, yeah, that would be a sight to see. Who knows? Maybe Nigel McGuinness will try and bust down the door and kick Brian's head in. You know how those two are. But obviously, with Pro Wrestling Ready, they've had multiple shows on, and you've been in some of those shows. Obviously, when they were FPWA, they had a First Cross New Wave Academy show. You were in the Fatal Five Way yourself, Let Me Justice.
Don't remind me.
Obviously, sadly, you would not emerge the victor. But competing in those Fatal Five Way matches, I can imagine it's very hard in cardio, right?
Oh, absolutely. It is so incredibly important to be physically fit in wrestling. And I must admit, it's a personal gripe of mine that some wrestlers are not. This is a sport, and this is a physical sport, and it is incredibly important to be strong and fit and to be able to compete at your highest level, whether that be for 3 minutes, whether that be 20 minutes. I'm someone who's in the gym 3 times a week. I am out running twice a week. I am training at the wrestling school twice a week. It is incredibly, incredibly important to be physically fit. And that like you perfectly said, in these sort of matches, you have to be ready.
Well, hey, that's why it's called Pro Wrestling Ready, because they're always keeping you guys ready for the next thing. But obviously, the hardest man in Fife is now a title that's held by someone you've tagged with. Daisy Jenkins is now the owner of that title. I want to know, do you think tagging with Daisy has maybe prepared you for taking that title offer?
Well, Daisy Jenkins is a remarkable young lady. She truly is. I have the utmost respect for her being able to take that title, especially when I failed. Let's get this right. I was about to win that title until Hunter Sampson interfered in the ring and kicked me in the face. Who wasn't in the match? I was this close, and I should have won. So I'm just gonna point that one out. But yes, Daisy is a remarkable young lady, and I Yeah, while I would quite like to be known as the hardest man in Fife, I don't think chasing her title is high on my agenda.
Oh, fair dues. I mean, if you did win that title, I think you would classy remark it to the hardest gentleman in Fife. I mean, I think that just seems fair enough.
Well, I don't believe there are much gentlemen in Fife.
Well, true indeed. It may be a kingdom, but kingdom in name.
Certainly no kings there.
Oh, no, indeed. But obviously, you would have a match at the most recent, Pro Wrestling Ready show, the Truth or Dare show, which I was in attendance for, and you and a former guest of the show, Redfield, the team against the Meat Factory. But, something would happen, a bit of an interference from the power, Do you not feel bad for the Meat Factory? You didn't have a, shall we say, a gentleman match. It didn't have a conclusive end.
Oh, I'll tell you something. The Meat Factory are a pair of idiots. I have no sympathy for those two buffoons at all. Craig Berry has been a thorn in my side from day one in wrestling. So quite frankly, it was rather nice to see them get beat up. And if you check the record label, that will tell you that Zachary Swift won that match via disqualification, but I won. So no sympathy for those two big idiots. And this, I suppose, this is a good point to say. I advocate for weight classes in wrestling.
Oh, really?
That was a blind. I had no idea who. I thought when my name was called, I would be entering a singles match. Then I'm paired with Redfield, and that's fine. Redfield's a perfectly honourable gentleman, so I was okay with that. And I thought we'd wrestle, maybe the par, maybe a team of our size, but instead we got the Meat Factory. That is wholly unfair to put us against those two big buffoons. And this is the problem in wrestling, isn't it? It really is. These sort of horrible decisions, whether it's by a wheel or by a booker, I am constantly coming up against unfair circumstances.
Hey, fair dues indeed, Zachary. But some fans may say the proper right way to do would be a rematch at the Christmas show, with you and Redfield against the Meat Factory. Do you think maybe the fans are mistaken? They just want to see, this apparent injustice redone?
Well, listen, I think the Meat Factory have a par-shaped problem that they may be chasing a little bit at the next show. But I will wait in the wings because, yes, I do believe we do have some unfinished business with those two.
We always love to see Binish be fully completed and put on the back shelf, ready for the next one. But obviously, I want to get your thoughts on something, Zachary, as well. Because at this Truth or Dare show, it was announced that Frank Gallo is going to be taking on Andy Roberts for his title at the next show. And I want to know, as your insight, who do you think is going to walk out with a belt?
Frank Gallo is clinically insane. I want to highlight that right now. That man should not be in a wrestling ring. He is bona fide, completely bloody nuts. I think it is ridiculous that Andy is even going to have to fight such a ridiculously crazy man. And I can only hope that Mr. Roberts retains his title.
Well, you never know what can happen in the business of wrestling. But obviously, Zachary, you are the modern gentleman, and you've had seminars that you've learned from. But I want to know, say Pro Wrestling Ready gave you the chance to hold a seminar for your fellow colleagues in Pro Wrestling Ready, and you got to give them advice as the modern gentleman. What advice would you give them all?
Well, I think a few of those young men need to learn how to be honourable. They need to learn to respect some traditions. There's a lot of the young men, they're angry, belligerent young men. They are just sort of fighting their way to the top and doing anything by any means necessary. And I think you've seen that. You've witnessed that in the actions of the Par. You've seen that in the actions of men like Hunter Sampson. It is it is feral. It is a zoo-like atmosphere sometimes. And I think a lot of these young men need to learn a little bit of respect, and a little bit of honor, and learn some of the true wrestling traditions.
No, hey, I very believe that. You say of honor, and honor, immediately a place that comes to mind for me for honor is Ring of Honor. Such a place that has that honor, the code of honor and, the pure rules and everything. I want to know for yourself, Zachary, what would the modern gentleman do in Ring of Honor? Would they thrive? Would they bring more honor to the code, or what would happen?
I think I would thrive pretty well in Ring of Honor. I think, like you say, it is. I think it shares a synergy with my outlook and my perspective on professional wrestling. I think all bouts should begin with a handshake. Whether they should finish with a handshake, I think that depends on how the match has gone. But I think, I think all matches should begin with a handshake. I think Ring of Honor is, they have the correct sort of rules and respect for this industry. And somewhere, yes, I would love to have an opportunity to wrestle one day.
Well, hey, you never know what can happen. Our little island of the United Kingdom has been thriving with its wrestling. AEW coming all in for Wembley, WWE bringing over Clash of the Castle, Money in the Bank, and there's even some words that WWE might bring over a WrestleMania. Personally myself, I just want it to happen at Redfield Stadium. I don't want to travel far. I hate the 8-hour train ride down south. It's annoying. It's very repetitive. I would like to stay in my own humble abode with my own little central heating and a wee drink at my side. So I want to know from yourself, Zachary, if WWE bring over WrestleMania, and let's say they place it in Scotland because we have the lovely weather for it, which stadium would you like to see it happen in?
It shouldn't be a stadium. Do you know where it should be?
Oh,
at the castle, on the promenade. On the promenade, open air. Get the seating that's put there for the tattoo.
Yes.
Get the high-rise seating there with the castle as the backdrop, ring in the middle, open air in the heart of Edinburgh. I think that would be wonderful.
Oh, Zachary, you've got my mind going mental, mate. I can imagine the custom arenas in 2K right now making this the grandest WrestleMania, the most royalist of WrestleMania. I think that is a very, very good idea. And obviously, the UK itself and Scotland and everywhere else is thriving. And, as a wrestler from the UK, I want to know what the sense of pride you take. I know that companies like Progress, RevPro, and, obviously Impact are doing their UK tour right now. They're all coming over, and they're thriving here and our scene's thriving. I got to know the sense of pride you must feel as a UK wrestler.
Oh, absolutely. British wrestling has always been there. There's been amazing wrestlers from every generation. But I think now, at this moment, more and more eyes are coming to the UK and seeing what's happening within our independent scene. Did you see the news about Leon Slater last night?
I did indeed. Very well done for him.
Leon Slater signing with Impact Wrestling. I think that is just a sign of the times of, these big American corporations just seeing how incredible the wrestling and the wrestlers are on our shores. And, you are entirely right. I take great pride in being in this new revival of British wrestling.
Absolutely. And also, you mentioned Leon Slater there, a 19-year-old man getting signed by, TNA. It's just absolutely amazing to see that people are now taking a look on us. Because, you've seen these Yankee fans and you're like, oh, UK fans aren't passionate. They won't sell out, Wembley Stadium for AEW. They won't turn out for Money in the Bank or kind of house shows or stuff like that. But we're proving them wrong time and time again. Why do you think people look down on UK wrestling fans in general and not saying they have the passion, the drive to sell out these shows and be there for the companies they love?
I don't know. I think they're wrong. I think we've proven them wrong, and I think they're entirely wrong. The North Wrestling in Newcastle, they had 1,000 at their show in the summer. I think professional wrestling in the UK is absolutely thriving. People are turning up to these shows, and I think it's only going to get bigger and better. You see that with over 70,000 at AEW at Wembley, Money in the Bank selling out immediately in London. Also, I think we've proven them wrong as a nation that this is a wrestling nation.
Absolutely. When those shows come over again, it's going to be absolutely amazing. The only enemy out of that will be Ticketmaster, because Ticketmaster sucks, and we all know that 100%. But also, touching upon Leon Slater there again, I want to know, Zachary, besides, I think yourself should be signed to a big company already, because every company needs the modern gentleman. What other talent, in the UK, do you think need to get signed to big companies that have the drive, have the passion, and have the desire to become better?
Do you know who is a criminally underrated wrestler?
You tell me.
Ian Skinner.
Oh,
Ian Skinner is a phenomenal wrestler. He's a technical genius. He is fantastic in the ring. He is a perfect character. I think Ian Skinner should be signed to a major company or to a contract immediately.
Oh, hey, that's a fair. We got the validation from the modern gentleman himself, so I think that's very true indeed. Now, obviously, the modern gentleman needs a modern gentlemanly title. So I want to know, Zachary, proposing a little question to you right now. Out of the UK scene, which belt do you think represents the modern gentleman the most? Which one would you like to see across your waist or over your shoulder while you make yourself to the ring, pal?
Oh, that is a very good question. I wonder. I'm sort of imagining many a belt around my waist now. It's rather fun. What would I like to see around my waist? Do you know what belt I would like to see around my waist? The Discovery Wrestling, the Y Division Championship. As you well know, Edinburgh is where I'm born. Well, not born, but where I live, where I spent most of my life here. I'm proud to be from Edinburgh. I'm proud to represent Edinburgh, and I think that would be an ultimate goal one day to have Edinburgh's Ultimate Championship around my waist.
Hey, that sounds good to me, pal. And obviously, Discovery have got an upcoming show where, one of your colleagues and one of your trainers, Andy Robbins is going for the Y Division title against G Money, and Daisy Jenkins going for the women's title against Casey. I want to know if your thoughts, do you think these guys are going to get the belts? Do you think they can bring back the belts to Pro Wrestling Ready?
No, this is difficult. G Money, actually, I'll have you know, is a family friend of mine.
Oh.
So, so it's coach against family friend. But knowing the integrity of these men, I do believe that it is Mr. Roberts' time. Things are stirring with Power Pro now, with Pro Wrestling Ready. Good things are happening. There is momentum behind us. We believe in our abilities and we believe in each other. And I wouldn't be surprised to see a clean sweep. I wouldn't be surprised to see Power Pro take over Discovery at that show.
That could be very, very enticing. Maybe down the line you see a Pro Wrestling Ready versus a Discovery Wrestling show. That makes me think, like, Zachary, if that happens, that crossover show happens, who would you like to face at this kind of crossover show between Pro Wrestling Ready and Discovery?
A man I've just mentioned, Mr. Ian Skip.
Well,
I believe he is the measuring stick in Scotland of technical British wrestling. And I would like to put myself against him and see how I could perform.
Well, that would be very enticing indeed. But Zachary, we're coming to the end of our time here on the Soul Session. So before I finish, I want to propose a little nice scenario here. Let's say you are the Y Division champion in Pro Discovery Wrestling around your waist, and you have a nice old fashioned in hand, but you could have a dream match, defend your title against anyone from the States, anyone from the UK, anyone from Japan, Mexico, anywhere in the world. I want to know, man, who do you want to defend your title against in a dream match?
Who would it be? I think it would have to be Bryan Danielson. I mean, Bryan is the best wrestler in the world. For my money, he's the best wrestler in the world. So, if there's anyone, if I was defending a belt against him, I'm not sure I would be able to successfully defend my belt against him, but what an opportunity that would be.
Wow, I got to know as well. Would you add a little stipulation? Pure rules, Iron Man, TLC, submission. Come on, I got to know.
Oh, let's do 2 out of 3 falls.
Oh, that just sounds very enticing indeed. You know what? Before we go here, I'll throw out another spitball fire question. Bryan Danielson, he says that maybe this is his time. His time's coming to an end. He said he told his daughter he would only do it for a couple more years and then he would be finished. I want to know, when and who would you want Bryan Danielson's final match to be? I
think we all want it to be Nigel McGuinness, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
I want an exhibition wrestling match that would just be wonderful to watch. Just, Nigel's amazing British wrestling, Bryan Danielson's technical ability, just these two just having a wonderful time in the ring. I think that would be a joy to watch.
Well, I think that should be All In, right? Next year?
I believe so too.
Sucking Americans, we get the good shit. Oh, hey, Zachary Sist, my friend, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here on the Soul Sessions. But obviously, what I love to do with every guest, if you've got something lined up in the pipelines and you can share it with the viewers right now, they've loved what they heard of you. What have you got, my friend?
I am just looking internally at the moment. As you're well aware, FPWA have recently rebranded to Power Pro, Pro Wrestling Ready. Pro Wrestling Ready is our wrestling school, and Power Pro, of course, is the shows that we will be putting on. We have gathered amazing momentum over the last year and a half, building our audience and our characters and our stories. And I think we are at such an important moment, rebranding the new training school opening in Livingston, which of course is just a stone's throw from myself here in Edinburgh. So at the moment, I'm spending my time looking sort of entirely sort of internally and focusing on our school and our training, our shows, and making sure they are the best they could possibly be. So if you want to catch Zachary Swift, find yourself at the next Power Pro show.
Very true indeed. And as well, as I do with every guest, you can find Zachary Swift's Instagram in the description of this video. Click it, follow him, and see the journey of the modern gentleman. Well, Zachary, my friend, a pleasure here having you on the Soul Sessions. I would say the whole YouTube shtick, but YouTube's been around since 2005. I ain't got to repeat myself. You already know what to do. But thank you, everyone, for tuning in here for another episode of the